Good morning, everyone. I still get nervous coming in front of crowds like you here. It truly was an honor to be asked to come and speak at this conference, so thank you, Anne, and thank you to the organizing committee as well. It's good to see so many people focused on the Arctic in one room. So give yourselves an applause too, because this is such an important, yes. And it doesn't happen by accident either. It happens because something is shifting. And that's what we keep hearing through all the speakers so far. One of the things we do, and I think Mads brought this up, is we describe the Arctic as Canada's frontier. And if you were to close your eyes and visualize that, that's kind of sounding like the Arctic sits at the edge of who we are. It really doesn't. It's foundational, it anchors sovereignty, and it gives strategic strength. And more, it's going to shape our economic future. And I think Candace will really dig into that when she comes up here in a moment. So just picture for a second, everybody take a breath, Canada without the North. Yeah, without that vast land that really defines our map. How many maps have we seen up here today? Without Arctic waters linking two oceans. And without the Dene, the Inuit, the Métis communities whose stewardship of this land has anchored Canada's sovereignty for generations. So now I want to localize this a little bit. Much of the national debate on the Arctic sovereignty and defense has focused a lot, and maybe this is a bit of our fault in the media, I still consider myself a journalist. It focused mainly and heavily on Greenland and the Northwest Passage. And when we talk about economic pressure from President Donald Trump, the conversation often shifts to the south, to the 49th parallel. How many people have been hearing about the Gordie Howe Bridge frequently? Yeah, that's been in the news. But standing here in Whitehorse, that framing really misses something vital. Canada's western land boundary with the United States is largely Alaska-Yukon border. And for generations, Indigenous families have crossed back and forth across that border. Trade and culture predate that line, and wildlife does too, of course. Everybody would know this in the room. The porcupine caribou moves between Alaska, Yukon, and the Northwest Territories, and it is vital to communities on all sides. That is lived reality. So is the Alaska Highway. Everybody here knows well about that. It carries food, it carries fuel, and supplies north every single day. And it is a lifeline. And these realities cannot be left out of the Arctic debate. So one of the things I want to talk about a little bit is my work hosting the Arctic Edge podcast. It's truly been an honor and a thrill, but also my nearly 25 years, yes, as a senior journalist. I've spoken with people from Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, the northern parts of many provinces, and they know exactly what's at stake right now. If the North isn't secure, neither are the rest of us. And you can see why. You can see it in the new shipping routes. We've seen that on many of the maps that have been up here already. You see it in the growing interest of critical minerals. We've also heard that from many of our speakers this morning, and in the growing military footprint. But you also see it on the land, in communities asking what this promised wave of new investment will mean for them. And young people deciding whether they can build a future at home here in the North. In Indigenous leaders making it clear that sovereignty isn't just about territory, it's about who gets to shape what happens next. Now, for decades, Canada's Arctic approach was pretty straightforward. Sovereignty meant presence by people on the ground, by infrastructure on the map, maybe not the best infrastructure, but much of the military, I'm going to take you back a bit, much of the military build-out, including the Dew Line and the oil town of Norman Wells, was built largely by the Americans. as a part of continental defense during the Cold War era. If we're honest with ourselves, our investment didn't always match the sovereignty we claimed. Too often, we relied on presence more than building strong communities. And in some cases, it came with a terrible cost. In the 1950s, Inuit families were relocated to Grise Fjord, Canada's northernmost civilian community. And that was as part of the federal effort to reinforce Canada's Arctic claim. Those Canadians were in effect used as human flagpoles. And that decision shaped so many lives. It shaped communities. And I know for some of you in this room, and I want to thank you personally, it shaped your family's story. And that is why sovereignty, that word, it just can't be used so casually. Sovereignty isn't just about saying the land is ours. It's about whether the people who live there are respected, that they're invested in, and treated as partners in that claim. And this is where we're hoping this moment is shifting. And I'm always an optimist, so I'm really hoping that the moment is shifting. And if you look at the federal government's new defense industrial strategy, it does tie sovereignty directly to economic resilience. It acknowledges that northern infrastructure is stretched too thin. We've heard that already from many of our speakers. And it commits to dual-use, multi-use investments. Let me dig into that a bit. Airports, ports, energy, telecommunications. Places like Iqaluit, Inuvik, and Yellowknife are being positioned as operational hubs. That's great news. It means long-term investments so operations in the Arctic are year-round for supplies, for aircraft, for rapid response. Sounds good, right? And it is a start, but let's dig into that a bit deeper. If we upgrade runways and logistics, those investments can't just serve defense. We can't do that. They have to strengthen the communities that are already there. A runway that supports national security should also support trade. Makes sense. A port that asserts sovereignty should also move goods. Mining sites can share needed infrastructure with the military. I've heard it discussed. And energy projects built to power a military base so it should also lower costs for residents. Everybody sitting there goes, this is all making sense. That's when communities actually feel the difference. Because sovereignty in 2026 isn't just about radars. It isn't just about runways. It's about housing that people can afford, energy costs that do come down, Indigenous businesses in the supply chain, and not happening from the sidelines. Of course, security does matter. We all agree with that. But it has to translate in something that lasts. If the North really is central to our future, and I think we all believe it is, then our commitment has to be real. Not once, not in bursts, but consistently. It means working with Northern leaders, not around them. We're going to hear from a fantastic Northern leader. I can see him on the sidelines. Harlan will be out here soon. It means building the kind of capacity that stays after the government announcement. It means putting real investment behind the people who already call the North home. The Arctic has always been a part of our story. But for a long time, we treated it like something that was distant. Easy to reference, hard to prioritize. This moment does feel different for me, and I hope it feels different for you, because now we're talking about real money, real infrastructure, decisions that shape communities for decades. So the question isn't whether the Arctic matters. We know, of course it does. It's whether we're ready to follow through, to build strength, not just presence, to invest in people who have carried this land for generations. And if we do that, then this isn't just another policy cycle. It's a turning point. Because the North, it's not distant. It's central. Central to our security, central to our economy, central to who we are. And that's why I'm coming back to this room. That's why this room really matters. That's why these conversations really matter. And if we leave here committed, not just inspired, I want you to be inspired as well, but not just inspired, this room becomes more than a conversation. This is where it will shift. It will be the Arctic moment. Thank you.